information, videos, whatever, right? Right. Okay. No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
We have to constantly evolve.
But my point to you was, Tim, that you're claiming that somehow this is an absolute when it comes to morality. Killing an animal is just wrong.
When it's unnecessary.
All right, okay, when it's unnecessary, but you see this
so
word...
everyone living in this country...
But you see this word... But this, so, okay, for Eskimos, who don't have vegetation, is it morally acceptable to kill seals and eat the seals?
I mean, they chose to live there. They don't have to live there, so that's up to them. That's their decision. But when it comes to talking about our own individual actions, we can't base it on what the Eskimos are doing.
But I'm asking you a direct question here.
I think they should move.
Okay, you think so? So it's morally wrong for them to eat seals then?
Well, they don't have to be living there.
No,
they chose to live there. So they should,
I understand that. But are you therefore saying that it's inherently immoral for them to eat seals and fish in that environment?
Personally, yes.
Okay, so now you see, what I'm trying to say to you is that this is where the problems arise, you see, because you said when there is not a need. Now I would say that there is a clear need for people there because they would die if they didn't have.
Just move.
But you see, you make a flippant remark like they could just move. No, you make that remark. But these people have been there for what, tens of thousands of years, right? If not millions of years, right? They go back, right? Now, they should just move might not be something that they might even be capable or maybe easy for them to do, right? That's their environment, that's what they're used to.
Their culture.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? So, but you're saying now that even if there is a need, it's still immoral, it's still unjust, it's still unfair.
So I'm saying there isn't a need because they can move.
Well, maybe they can, maybe they can't.
How did they get there in the first place? I mean, like we as a civilization,
I don't know, but
us as a civilization grew up around the equator. Everything that we needed come from those areas, all the fruits, vegetables, everything.
Personally, I wouldn't like to live in such a cold environment.
They migrated.
Why don't you bring up the argument that scientists have carried out a new study which shows that even plants feel pain.
Right. Yeah.
So isn't it immoral for us to eat from the plants?
So that's plants feeling pain is almost another excellent reason to go vegan because when we eat animals, it takes 16 kilograms of plant protein to produce 1 kilogram of animal protein.
I think it's more. No, it's more than that.
Oh, 16 kilograms of plant protein, yeah, to produce 1 kilogram of animal
protein.
So we actually destroy and harm way more.
I think it might be a lot more than that.
Animals.
I think it might be a lot more than that.
No, it's roughly about that.
Is it?
So what you're trying to say is like, it's all right eating the plant.
Because I heard that like water, to produce 1 kilogram of beef, I think it takes something like 1,000 or 10,000 litres of water.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So I agree.
We waste so many resources.
I totally agree with you.
It's just
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. But my point to you is that to say something is inherently cruel, that is an objective claim. And all I'm arguing with you, all I'm sort of saying to you is that, with all due respect, I think it's not an objective claim. It is a subjective claim. It's a subjective claim. I think the objectivity on morality, I think, only comes from the Creator.
Well, that's
no, I understand that.
Subjective.
Well, yeah, you could argue
that's
that.
Your opinion.
Yeah, of course, you can argue that. Of course, absolutely. But then, what I would urge you to do, Tim, is that I've made a claim, right? I've said that there is a Creator, and the Creator's told us that under certain circumstances, in a certain way, it's acceptable to eat meat, right?
Yeah.
Now, I would hope what you would do is to say, okay, well, Abass has made this claim. Let me at least explore his claim to this Creator and this objective truth.
Yeah.
Do you understand my point?
Yeah.
So I'm just asking, I'm wondering, have you read the Quran at all? Have you studied it?
But we could make so many claims based on that. Like, you know, I read a book, it said I can do this, and therefore I'm going to do that, and like, you know, my book says I
understand that, but if it's just a book, it doesn't matter, right? I think the issue here is that, do you analyze something to truly find out whether it is just a book, like any other book, or in fact, is it something far greater than anything you or I or anybody else for that matter could have come up with? And are there objective truths in there? Are there things in there that this Creator is informing me, telling me, and educating me in relation to these concepts, which at best I think demonstrated at best, are subjective, right?
Oh, completely.
And I believe that there are certain things that most of us decent people would accept, which is that being, cruel to an animal or slaughtering it in a cruel way or over-consuming that animal, clearly I would accept with you that is harmful. I would agree with that.
What's an uncruel way to take the life of someone, causing you no harm and just wants to live?
The uncruel or the least cruel way, I believe.
So,
Well, look, because this word cruel itself can mean very different things to many different people. So the level of cruelty, let's say, that a person may find acceptable, another person might not, right? So we have to be very careful when we use these words, right? I think the least harm and the least cruel way of consuming an animal is how Allah tells us to consume it, to how to rear it, how it should be looked after, and how it should be slaughtered. I think that's the least cruel way of doing it. And if we follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and hardly consume meat on a very rare, very occasional basis, then I think this world would be a much better place.
Completely. I mean, people reducing is only going to improve. But when it comes to a moral issue, and taking the life of others clearly is a moral issue.
When you use the word others, again you're attributing a link between human beings and animals, and I would argue.
What's so important about us that makes us
It's a very good question. Very, very good question, in fact.
That we can just arbitrarily end the life of an animal.
Yes,
but we
it's a
can't
very,
take
it's a very good question. What makes us better than an animal, right? Now, clearly, I would suggest that the one who created the animal and created us, human beings, has the authority to attribute the hierarchy.
That's subjective, isn't it?
No, it's subjective if I come up with it or you come up with it. It's objective if it comes from the creator. Now,
I haven't heard it come from the creator.
Right, so I accept that. So what I would then suggest to you is that analyze my claim. Do look at the Quran, study the Quran, come up to your own conclusions. Do I feel this could be from the creator? What's the evidence? Is it just some fancy words? Or is there much more to this Quran? What are the other facets of evidence that strengthen the claim that it is from God, from the creator? And then analyze it as objectively as you can, and then come to a conclusion. But what I would suggest, you see, Tim, is this, life is very short, Tim. Right, I'll be 50 this year, bloody hell, half a century, right? And I remember when I was just running around without a care in the world, no worries, no problems, no stress, right? Of course, life is all about hoops and, some on fire, some without fire, you're jumping through these hoops all the time, right? So, and death is very close, a lot closer than we think. And it's a certainty. And after that certainty, either we stand in front of Allah, in front of God, or there's nothing. If there is a creator, the consequence of that and the value of the afterlife, which is eternal, surely is more than anything else that we've ever experienced or seen. And so all I'm going to say to you is that, just think about, reflect on that, contemplate about that, and think about, well, look, if I die and if I stand in front of God, first of all, is there a God? I need to analyze that, because if there is, there's some major issues, right, that I need to perhaps look at, because what does his God want me to do?
If I believed in a God, I still would be a vegan.
That's
definitely.
fine.
Every single there's no religion that mandates eating animals. So all I will ask you is, what is stopping you from going vegan?
Okay, because for me it's not haram in my Sharia, in my morality, ordained by God. That's the first thing. So Allah has not ordained it to be haram. So that's the main reason. So I've never drank alcohol in my life. I've never smoked drugs or taken drugs in my life. But I didn't do those things because I felt inherently that, I'd suddenly, fizzle away and die or something. purely because Allah said don't do these things.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So the initial reasoning is because Allah did not ordain it to be haram. The reason why I haven't had meat for the last few months or whatever is for a lot of the reasons that you highlighted and we discussed, because I think the way that we're doing it today is not according to what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, told us to do, and respect animals and treat animals. I don't think that we do that in a 99% of cases, let's say, for example, right? Or maybe 95% or whatever, right? For most cases. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that the reason, perhaps, as I said to you, that I still eat fish or whatever. I do enjoy it. I do enjoy it.
We're very disconnected from the ocean.
I do enjoy it, and I think there is some nutritional benefits from having fish, but also because I don't see it in the same light as cooping a chicken up in a tight cage, chopping off its beak. Chickens dying in the cages, others pecking it to death or whatever. I don't see it in the same light as that.
Would you say animals have moral value?
In what sense?
Do they have the right to live out their lives? Do they have? Should they be granted moral respect?
I think that you should be compassionate, loving and caring to animals.
Yeah.
But I think if you, for example, rear a chicken for the purposes of giving you eggs, that is why you've, in effect, hatched that egg in the first place, right? The egg would not exist if you didn't have that chicken, right? You understand what I'm saying? Now, the only difference that perhaps you or I might have is that I believe that if you do that in a cruel way, it's a sin for Muslims. It's a sin, right? And it's not tayyib. And the word tayyib in the Quran is linked to piety. So if you wish closeness to God and piety, you can't be cruel to animals. But the concept here is that what constitutes cruelty, you see? Now you might say that just consuming it that's it. I don't care how you rear it, how you kill it, I don't care what you do, I think it's still cruel. And for me as a Muslim, if it's reared properly, if it's kept properly, and you eat with moderation, not to the level where it starts to literally kill you, right? Then for me that's halal. It's a good way to eat the animal.
Well, you're objectifying the animal. You're treating them like a property, like an object. The only reason you have that chicken in the first place,
yes,
because you want the eggs.
The eggs, yes.
So
yes.
You're not treating the animal fairly.
You're not treating it like a human being, but you are treating it like an animal.
Well, we are animals.
Well, to an extent, we're all beings.
We should all have the right to live out our lives free from harm.
Yes.
Just because we have the ability to use animals doesn't give us the moral justification to do so. Yes. Like we have alternatives in abundance. That means we don't have to use animals, and we should use that. It's all about reducing our harm and causing the least amount of impact as possible.
Yes.
Once we start treating animals, we basically treat them like slaves. Because we think we're superior to animals, we feel like we can just do what we like with them.
Yes.
We are in effect playing gods when we bring them into existence and then just decide what we do with them.
Yes. Look, I agree with some of what you've said, but the reality here is that if, let's say for argument's sake, chickens, right? If you were just to let them all loose, we know for a fact that the foxes would get them.
Yeah. But the only reason so many chickens exist in the first place is because we bring them into existence for our own pleasure.
I agree.
If our demand for those chickens decreases, there'll be less chickens.
Well, let me ask you a question. In this country, birds, I think 50 million birds or something a year, it's an enormous amount, are killed by cats and other animals. Now, instead of that cat killing that pigeon, if I were to slaughter it humanely and I were to eat it, why would that be any worse?
Well, because the cat has no moral agency. The cat literally does it based on instinct.
But then you're making
you have the capability to know what you're doing.
No, but you're making a moral stance. You're making a moral stance, with all due respect, to fit your thinking, right? Rather than it by itself being moral or immoral, if you know what I mean. In other words, you have a predisposition, i.e., a first principle that any human being that kills an animal is inherently cruel. That's your initial first principle.
Live and let live.
Right, and then from that, under any circumstances, if an animal is killed, you're attributing cruelty to it.
Well, you're taking the life. I'd say taking the life of someone
but to
is
some
ultimately
extent,
cruel.
But to some extent, you're having your cake and you're eating it, because you're saying that we are animals as well, human beings, and in the animal kingdom, clearly, life and death happens all the time.
So did you know, like 25% of animals eat, only 25% of animals, roughly, something like that, eat other animals. So we're basing, like we're basically cherry picking what we like from the animal kingdom.
No, but my point to you is this: that if it's inherently immoral as a human animal to eat another animal, then you'd have to, by that testimony, you'd have to argue that when a cat kills a pigeon, that's immoral as well.
Yeah, well, we can't reason with a cat. We can reason with each other.
But how do you know? How do you know the cat doesn't know that it's doing something wrong?
I have no idea.
Well, that's my point. You see that.
But you don't.
No,
what you're doing
I agree, but
you're taking the life for no reason
I agree,
whatsoever.
but you see, I agree, but you're building an argument based upon assumptions that are not absolutes.
But you're boasting.
They're purely based upon with all due respect.
Your argument is based upon a God that we don't know exists or not.
I agree with you. No,
but
no,
I'm basing my logic on truth and reason.
But I agree.
And what we can actually see and feel.
Yes, but Tim, I agree with you that you don't know if there is a creator or there isn't a creator. But I've made a very bold claim. I'm saying, look, I believe that there is, and these are the reasons why I believe that there is. All you have to do is offer me the intellectual respect, just as I've engaged with you, to try to understand where you're coming from. And we're not actually that dissimilar in a lot of stuff that we believe.
No, of course not.
That's the amazing thing, right? Now, your beliefs come from a moral code which I would suggest is a good moral code, in the sense that it's out of compassion and out of love.
Yeah.
My moral code perhaps comes from that also, but comes fundamentally from the Creator about how to treat animals, how not to treat animals. But offer me the intellectual respect, and hopefully you'll engage with me also, and evaluate my claim that, you know what, this Quran is from God. These are the reasons why I believe that it is from God, and analyze those reasons for yourself and come up to your own conclusion.
Yeah.
You know, the Quran says very clearly there is no compulsion in religion.
Yeah.
It's not about compelling people or forcing people, but we present that, look, this is the Quran, this is Islam. Forget what these Muslims are doing, because believe you me, you read the Daily Mail or the Sun, or you see the bad examples of some Muslims. I understand why people are so fearful, right? Analyze it for what it is. And inshallah, God willing, Allah says we guide every heart that actually seeks God, that seeks Allah, that wants the truth, that is searching. You will find it, inshallah. But analyze my claim and intellectually analyze it for what it is, and then come up to with your own conclusion, And
I'm pretty sure I already know what I'm going to. My conclusions aren't going to be changing. My stance isn't going to be changing. I definitely, I've always had these beliefs. It's just being presented. Like, we were taught from a child, like social conditioning is taught you.
That one? Sorry, is that one? I've got so many on, I don't know which one.
Yeah, no, that one.
Oh, that one, sorry.
Sorry.
All right, okay.
That one's mine.
That one's yours? Okay. All right, whose are these? Okay. All right, who's that one?
I'll take those.
That one. And this one?
I don't know who's that. I'll take those. I'll take them.
And this one?
That's fine. Yeah.
The sack is going to be there.
Yeah, it should be.
You make some fantastic points, and to be honest,
I'll be honest with you, I don't really like him, man. Like, he's a bit crafty, you know that? Crafty guy, I don't like him.
Yeah. He's a bit of a knob. There's a bit of extra, like one time we went out to Central, we got all mashed up, and then he expected me to carry him home and shut up and fuck off. I got it all the way back to Hounslow here, to the Hounslow station, and then back to Hounslow.